334 indicator and always online at johnstonrvcenter.com. Go see Fall in America in an RV from Johnston RV Center.
I was by that new location of Slice last night, right there in downtown Homewood, and what a beautiful location. If you don't know where it is, it's the old New York Pizza, right?
It is, yep, right there on Oxmoor and Broadway, right on the corner. Get into the Bajai Brothers. Yeah, we had a Calcutta there back, I guess it was the week they opened. So I guess that was back in early March.
That private room up in the front there?
Yep.
Yeah, it's a great little private room. You can rent out for parties and everything right there at Slice. And as I was having the discussion with the guy who was cooking my pizza last night, a lot better dough, a lot better pizza than the place that used to be there.
I agree completely.
5 great locations of Slice, the original Lakeview, Vestavia, Montevallo, Crestline Park, the one Dunaway's talking about in Edgewood, Homewood. Stop and see the Bajai Brothers, local pizza, local ingredients. For more information, slicebirmingham.com.
First down.
Better chance of an upset this weekend. Illinois over Oregon and Autzen, or Florida State knocking off Miami on the road.
Wow. I mean, Illinois, they're both about 3 touchdown dogs, right?
Right.
Jim, Illinois is just a better team than Florida State. Now, the difference here is Miami plays everybody close. Every single game they have played, they play close.
Yeah. First thing I would ask you, Brown, is the ACC
except Florida
replay center on Miami's side again this weekend? The chances are going to be yes.
Why change now?
Yeah. So they've helped them a lot, so they got that advantage. Oregon, man, they struggled to, Boise State's a quality loss. If we're going to count Vandy as a quality loss, Boise State's a quality loss. That wasn't a loss, a quality close win for Oregon.
Yeah.
But it was a close game. Could have been a loss for the Oregon Ducks. They played somebody else they shouldn't have been close early on. Was it Idaho?
Yeah.
It was Idaho.
It was. Yep.
Yeah, I think they won by 10.
Yeah, we've seen Oregon have sort of a blah game. Closer for me, Illinois beating Oregon than Florida State beating Miami.
I think I would be less shocked if we came in Monday and Illinois had won that game than I would be if Florida State had beaten Miami.
I just feel like Florida State players, I don't know if they had an early checkout or if they're close to checking out. I just don't see, if you're built on transfers, what your buy-in for the rest of this ride is.
Second down.
More total touchdowns Saturday. Jaylen Milroe or the combination of both Auburn and Kentucky?
Say that again for those in the back.
And Jim.
Yes, it's Jim. More total touchdowns. Jaylen Milroe on Saturday or the combination of Auburn and Kentucky?
So the Auburn-Kentucky total for you, Dunaway, is 44. So Lance is telling you that's going to be a low scoring.
Yeah, so you're looking at, they're expecting 5 touchdowns in that game.
I mean, Iowa's total's back to 37.5 this week.
They play better offense, Iowa has.
Yeah, but it's still 37.5 this weekend.
I know, but there were games last year where it was in the 20s. I think Iowa and Minnesota was in the 20s.
Yeah, Northwestern Iowa this weekend.
I feel like you're baiting me into saying Milroe when you really think it's Auburn-Kentucky.
Yeah.
But I feel like Milroe is the correct answer here.
I'm going to go Milroe, too. Breakout game.
Third down.
I agree. I think he's going to have a big game. Yeah.
Since
re-breakout.
Since the downward turn with the fan base.
He's going to break back
early October.
Yeah, he's going to break back out.
I mean, heck, half these people wanted to see Ty Simpson last week. Am I wrong?
Oh, I don't think half.
Ty Simpson.
Raise
your hand if you want to see Ty Simpson.
Raise your hand if you want to Ty Simpson.
If
Just raise your hand.
Nobody? All right. All right.
No, I saw 2 people.
We've grown as a fan base. I love that.
No, 2 people raised their hand that they wanted to see Ty Simpson.
Yes. Appreciate the Simpson family.
Yes, thank you, Simpsons, for sure.
Yeah. Jaylen Milroe, big game.
Third down.
Katy Perry, 41 years old today. Ultimately better career, Katy Perry or Stevie Nicks?
Some video of Stevie Nicks. Why are you showing me the Louisville shirt? That's got nothing to do with this question.
Stevie Nicks went to Louisville.
Stevie Nicks.
I'm sure she's had a concert there. Probably Katy Perry has as well.
Yes, at the Yum Center.
I mean, is Katy Perry going to be iconic 20 years from now?
I mean,
Stevie Nicks isn't. I mean, she is now. I'm just saying 20 years from now. Yeah. I don't know. If
I think Katy Perry, the trajectory she's on with American Idol, already done the Super Bowl.
Yeah. I think Stevie Nicks is better.
Yeah, I would not disagree with that. Yeah.
But I will say the correct answer here is Katy Perry.
Is American Idol still a big thing? Is it?
I mean, apparently, if you're paying her $30 million a year, pay her
$30 million a year.
She got $30 million, yeah.
But I think that's the way it works. Like American Idol was big, early 2000s, and now it's 2024. So the people who are watching that in their 20s and 30s are still watching network television because they're in their 50s and 60s. So that's why it's still big for advertisers. Stevie Nicks for me.
Fourth down.
Pablo Picasso would have been 143 today. Happy birthday, Picasso. Better Pablo, better career. Pablo Picasso, Pablo Escobar.
Monday Morning Live, Tom Luginbill of ESPN is ready to roll for 1 hour to get you ready for Week 10 of college football. Week 9 in the books. Alabama a winner, Auburn a winner. We'll get to both of those games. Big games nationally, including Ohio State having to make a fourth quarter comeback. But we'll start, Lugs, in the Southeastern Conference with a team that's been sleepy since week 1, but all of a sudden, maybe the SEC Coach of the Year, Mike Elko, continues to press all the right buttons, and Texas A&M gets that big prime-time win over LSU. First, good morning to you, and secondly, does Texas A&M have staying power into the playoffs?
Jim, good morning to you, too. I think the answer is yes, and the reason why is there is substance to this football team. There is a belief. There is a level of confidence. There is a buy-in. You go back to the offseason when Mike Elko got this job, and remember you had all of those high-profile recruits over the last couple of classes, and you kind of had to decipher through, okay, who wants to be here for the right reasons, who doesn't want to be here, who's only in it for this or who's only in it for that. We got to weed through all of that and figure out who it is that's going to be on this roster, but is going to do it the way that we're going to demand and require to create whatever our standard's going to be. And I think that what you're seeing from Texas A&M right now began this past offseason. Now, listen, it hasn't been easy. They've had to decipher through 2 quarterbacks, managing that, keeping the depth in the quarterback room engaged, and you got to start with somebody, but you got another guy that can clearly play. We saw that play out for them in a real positive way this past weekend, but there's something about this team, and I think a lot of it can be directed towards the comments that Mike Elko made about, this is a real program. And I think the reason what he's saying there is there's going to be a way we're going to do it. If you think this is all about, oh, well, we're the highest bidder and this is the biggest bag, that's not what we're about here. So you're going to have to figure out, do you want to play championship level football here? And with that, all of those other things will come. Or do you want to do it the other way around, which has proven not to be successful in years past?
Okay, here's the quote you're talking about. Quote, "This is a real program. It is not fake. It is not a politician running this program, talking fast and BSing everybody." Talking fast and BSing everybody. He doesn't say Jimbo Fisher, but he's saying Jimbo Fisher there. Is this the right time for Mike Elko to press that button?
Probably not. I think probably in the moment he let maybe emotions get the best of him. I think a lot of it comes from a sense of pride that he and the staff have found a way to get this team to perform in a manner that everybody who's a fan of college football, who has watched Texas A&M for the last 12 to 15 years, is looking at them and saying, this is what they're supposed to be. Finally, like this is what they're supposed to be. And I think there's a sense of pride about that probably from Mike Elko, which I wouldn't apologize for. I think what he's pointing at are a lot of the different traits that I brought up in the sense that what matters is there substance, is there a foundation, are there pillars, are there principles, and are you going to adhere to them? Are you going to try to take shortcuts? Are you going to try to buy your way in? All of those things have been tried before. And I think what he's pointing at is at the end of the day, this comes down to who loves football, who's willing to work for it, and who is going to toe the line in the same direction. Finally, that looks like to me what Texas A&M finally has.
You always hear the saying, and this is Monday Morning Live with Tom Luginbill of ESPN, brought to you by our friends at MyBookie, mybookie.ag. You always hear the saying, the old saying that if you got 2 quarterbacks, you ain't got none. Well, Conor Weigman gets hurt. Marcel Reed comes in earlier this season. And when Weigman was coming back healthy against Missouri, that big game, I was like, man, you can't take Marcel Reed out, can you? Put Weigman back in. They did. And Weigman, I thought, wow, he passed it
just killed
18-22.
Yeah, just killed Missouri, and I was like, they're better with Wegman. And then they're Wegman, and in this game they go to Marcel, and then I'm like, this guy is hitting every right choice out of the ballpark right now. It's like hanging curveballs for Mike Elko.
He's pressing all the right buttons, and I think you've got to credit the coaching staff, in particular as it relates to massaging that quarterback situation. Because the number one thing you can't do is have somebody check out because they think they should be the guy, and now all of a sudden they're not the guy. You've got to keep that player engaged, that player being Marcel Reed, understanding that, hey, listen, your moment may come again. Look at what we've been through already, and when your time to shine is called upon, you better be ready. And literally, I didn't think the move on Saturday, yes, it was reflective of A&M's inability to move the football effectively and make the throw or run the right route or protect when you needed them to. It wasn't all on Connor Wegman, but it was more of a spark move. Listen, we got to try something different here. We've had success with this young man. We've kept him engaged. We've told him his moment may come. Okay, here you go. And then next thing you know, not only did that provide a spark, but what was odd about it is LSU had no answer for quarterback run from the most athletic quarterback on A&M's roster.
Yeah, it looked like they had not looked at any tape for him there at all. Speaking of LSU, who looked lost defensively, in the second half, Garrett Nussmeier was fooled not once, not twice, but 3 times by Mike Elko's schemes there. Nussmeier was 50 times he was asked to throw the football in this game, and the final score was 38-23. But for a while, LSU was controlling this game. Nussmeier got fooled by a lot of schemes, by a lot of great plays by Aggie defenders there. They got a bye week, and then it's Alabama-LSU in a playoff elimination game. Where are you on LSU right now with the Tide coming to town?
Well, listen, going back to Garrett Nussmeier, when he threw that first interception, because he had been playing hot leading up to that moment, and you just love the feel and the moxie that you get from watching that guy and how he carries himself. And when you're a riverboat gambler, sometimes the gamble doesn't pay off, right? And you take one too many risks, and then when that risk catches up with you, it can start to accumulate. And that's what happened. When that first turnover happened, Garrett Nussmeier and this offense was never the same going forward. They forced him into a bad throw. He was willing to make it, and it caught up with him. You got to flush that. And I think having the bye week is probably a good thing from that perspective of having some time to sit down, reflect, watch it, study it, and then move forward and start to develop what's going to be the plan of resurgence here if you're LSU. Because you're right. I mean, they've got a run coming up where, and this is what we've talked about for the last 3 to 4 weeks, Jim. When you get in the month of November, and all of these games are going to have massive, massive implications, and no bigger coming up than Alabama and LSU.
If you're new to the show, Monday Morning Live with you every Monday during football season, year 2 of the show here. You can comment as you watch us on YouTube, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, on the video platforms, audio platforms up and rolling as well for your drive-in on your CarPlay with our app or on TuneIn Radio. We appreciate you there, and you can always get this in podcast form, Apple and Spotify, and it's always here for you on YouTube forever and ever. Amen. It's brought to you by our friends at mybookie.ag, mybookie.ag. Promo code next round, where tonight you get back into a little World Series action, a little Monday Night Football this week, more Tuesday, Wednesday college football games, and then the usual typical weekend. Next round, no space there. Put those two together, and you get a deposit bonus. Play the games, win like I did on yesterday, all at mybookie.ag, mybookie.ag. Make the games just a little bit more exciting right there at mybookie.ag. One more thing.
Did you have a big day?
I did have a good day yesterday, Saturday. It was Saturday, and I broke even in the NFL, but I won big on Saturday. Basically riding my gut on Saturday. It was just a good Saturday day at mybookie.ag. Tyler in the MyBookie chat room. Andy Staples believes that Elko was not talking about Jimbo Fisher, that he was talking about Brian Kelly. It was the fast talking that got me thinking about Jimbo Fisher. I guess if, I don't know, it could be Brian Kelly, post-game comments. Didn't feel that way, though.
No, I didn't think so. You remember, Mike's worked for for Brian Kelly.
Yeah.
And so, I didn't feel that way to me. Maybe Andy's onto something there, because I don't know what the point of those types of comments would have been in that setting with his former boss against the team he just lost, which has nothing to do with his program.
Yeah, I agree. His program is all about the aftermath of Jimbo Fisher. Ironically, all weekend long, and I played golf yesterday with a big Texas A&M guy who had not one, not two, but 3 head covers with Aggies on them. And he didn't bring up how much money they paid Jimbo Fisher one time yesterday. All he was talking about was the great quarterback Marcel Reed and the Aggies and what they can do down the stretch here as they are a playoff contender. All right, wanted to start the show there because Texas A&M was so big. As Matthew says in the chat room, Roll Tide, love the shutout win on defense. We'll talk about the Tide after I remind you the show is brought to you by our friends at Gutter Cap. Gutter Cap Birmingham. It's that time of year where the leaves are falling and our man C. Stu puts on the cape. And like Superman, he'll leap tall buildings, at least tall roofs, and get up there, clean out those gutters one more time, and then cap them right there where you never have to worry about the gutters being clogged again. 45% off the retail price. Free estimates with Gutter Cap of Birmingham. 205-823-2212. 823-2212. GutterCapBirmingham.com. GutterCapBirmingham.com, where we've said for years, cap it, don't snap it. It's GutterCap. GutterCapBirmingham.com. Okay, so Alabama's defense gets the shutout. Missouri, 7 punts, 3 interceptions, and then it ends the game on down. So a bad line there. Luther Burton, the all-everything wide receiver, 3 catches, 3 yards. But how come I don't get as excited about this as I should? Because it was all, to me, about the injured quarterback situation.
Well, it was, but I think if we look at this from maybe a bigger perspective and widen the lens a little bit of all of the criticisms and the negativity of the things that have not gone right, of the things that people have been frustrated with, the style of play that you haven't become accustomed to seeing from Alabama, in just about every one of those areas, Alabama was improved. And I think that's the thing. Like, listen, were the penalties where you want them to be? No. Were they dramatically lower and out of the double digits? Yes. Did I think all of those penalties were good calls? No. I thought the call on LT Overton should have been waved off.
Oh, yeah.
That's a terrible call. The holding call on Tyler Booker, come on, man. Like, so I actually thought from that perspective, Alabama really cleaned things up. That was a positive.
Yeah.
Defensively, I think I said to you a couple of weeks ago, this is a really good team when they're a pressure team. I just think that's who Alabama is. They need to pressure. They need to bring things from depth and simulated pressures and get people coming off the edge as a free rusher and catching a protection, being wrong. And next thing you know, you create turnovers. I mean, they've created 14 turnovers just in the last 5 games. I mean, what else do you want them to do, right? I think that side of the football for them is, again, starting to grow. It's starting to develop. It's starting to morph. There's a lot of positives there. I felt like they got some things going in the run game better than they had. The non-Jaylen Milroe portion of the run game, which is still, I think, a work in progress, was a bit concerned at times with both edges in Caden Proctor and Elijah Pritchett. They have their moments, but then they also have their turnstile moments too. And fortunately, you have an athletic quarterback who, by and large, can get you out of trouble when that occurs. Still missing a couple of things downfield in the passing game where I feel like Jalen's just a little bit disjointed, not as consistently accurate. We talked about this a little bit last week, Jim, in terms of exact ball placement, not being awful, but putting the ball in harm's way when it could be 6 inches, to one side or the other. So I thought there was a lot of positives to come away. You shut out an opponent, in-conference opponent, and I understand that Missouri's couldn't function at the quarterback position. That doesn't mean that you go out and lay an egg and let them walk all over you. You know what you do? You go out and put your foot on their throat, and you put an end to it. And I thought that's what Alabama did.
34-0. Alabama beats Missouri there. Brady Cook left, and then Drew Pine threw 3 interceptions in 4 drives, and that's where the game flipped. Let's go Jaylen Milroe first. He has been sacked 11 times in the last 4 games. And that's Jaylen Milroe being sacked 11 times in the last 4 games. You mentioned how mobile he is. At one point, it was Jaylen maybe holding the ball too long. You've just brought up the edge protection there. Could it be somewhere in between combination? Why are the sack numbers up? Could it be just they're playing elite SEC edge rushers?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all of those things. But I do believe that Jaylen Milroe has had a penchant for holding onto the ball maybe slightly longer than he should regularly, whether that's a result of not seeing it clearly and pulling the trigger, maybe being unsure, or as you referenced, maybe there's some people in his face and it's altering his timing and his anticipation. It's probably a combination of things. It's rarely just one component where you sit there and say, well, we get that part of it fixed, everything else changes. He just the lack of I don't think Jaylen Milroe is ever going to be an innately accurate passer. I don't know if that's what he is. I believe that he is accurate enough to give you a chance when you've got really good personnel on the receiving end that can make the most out of whatever is thrown their way. So we have to look at Jaylen Milroe and say, okay, there's some things where you're going, I'm not going to change the stripes on that tiger, right? That's what he is. So let's figure out how do we mask some of that stuff and how do we avoid some of those other negatives. Is it ever going to be completely and entirely perfect? No. But it was better than it's been. It was better than it was against Tennessee. But there just seems to be a little bit of a disjointed component to their passing game still.
Yeah, and with him running the ball, everyone keeps telling me he's healthy. Everyone keeps telling me he's healthy. Tyler Booker on our show last Tuesday, he said 100% to start with, then he came back and said, no, nobody's 100% this late in the season, which is true. Yeah. But even on his touchdown run, it just didn't have the same burst, smoothness.
He looked like he was dragging a little bit.
Yeah.
Like he was pulling something really heavy from behind him.
Yeah,
and I get it. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
He did, and that may just be a result of lower body fatigue. You're 10 weeks in almost. You have been utilized. There's some miles on that chassis, and again, we don't know how they're managing him during the week either. You know, we don't know what they're doing with his body, what they're giving him. You know, because obviously, as you're starting quarterback, you got to practice him. He's got to play. So it's not like having Travis Hunter where you can say, okay, we're going to sit you on this day, all right, and we're not going to play you on this side of the football on this day in practice. You can't do that with Jaylen Milroe.
Yeah, I just if the season ends and they tell me he played the final 9 games with this injury, I'm going to be a little upset, I think, that we haven't been able to sort of embrace him and celebrate him gutting it out for the Crimson Tide for 9 weeks, because I feel in my heart of heart, I love me some Jaylen Milroe, and I feel like that's what he's doing. He's got some kind of injury that's going to get cleaned up when the season's over with, and we're going to hear a story that, you know, Jaylen Milroe played the last 9 games with this, and man, what a great Crimson Tide star he was for gutting it out the rest of the way for Bama.
Well, I'll say this, Jim, and I would agree with you because I think he's not only a great kid, I think he's a tough kid. He'd probably never say a word about what's going on with him physically. I think he carries a lot of the weight of the program in the offense on his shoulders, maybe more so than he should, which at times can lead to pressing a little bit. But from what I've seen from him this year, and if there is any legitimacy to, you know, being banged up to the point where it can affect your play in and play out performance, I think he's a guy that may need to really think about whether he should come back to Alabama and have another year in this offense where he can prove maybe and put on tape a significant sample of consistency of performance. I think that's really important for him because he's going to turn his papers into the NFL. And I'll be very, very curious whether or not they tell him you're either a first or second rounder or you need to go back to school. Right now, I would say they may tell him to go back to school.
Tom Luginbill of ESPN is with us. A little bit more on Alabama in just a second. But, Lugs, I want to ask you about our friends at roback.com. Always the great gear. It's at is it hoodie season up there yet for you? I know we got them on inside here.
I got one right here.
Yeah, and I got a hoodie on.
I don't have it on.
I got a hoodie on, but
listen,
it's November down here, and we're still kissing 90 degrees every day.
Well, Jim, it's so funny you said that. So I had the late game on Saturday night with Duke and SMU, and it's a nice 73, 74 degrees at like 11 o'clock at night. Wake up on Sunday, I do my show with Barrett Sallee yesterday, and I walk out of the hotel, and it was like 55 degrees, and I'm in shorts and a t-shirt. I was like, what the heck just happened? So now all of a sudden it's cool here in the greater Charlotte area. I don't know what it's like that morning time for you right now.
Yeah, no, it's in the 60s again. We're going to get up into the 80s again today, and it's fall's just not coming. I know what's coming. Yeah. It's going to go.
The leaves don't know what to do.
Oh yeah,
like the leaves are confused.
Yeah. Stay out of our gutters. We told you about gutter cap earlier.
The leads are in a conflict of assignment right now.
That's right. Roback.com gets you ready for hoodie season coming up, maybe where you are already. Roback.com, promo codes TNR20. Get you 20% off your order there. 20% off thanks to our friends at Roback. TNR20, the promo code. You got the hoodies. You got the great golf wear. I'm going on a golf trip to Las Vegas a little bit later this week and was packing up golf gear last night. All had Roback's logo on it. Just great golf pants as well. I got a pair on right now. We're doing the Memphis, Alabama basketball game tonight in Huntsville, so I got my comfortable Roback pants on as well. Jaylen Milroe, by the way.
You going to the Von Braun Center, buddy?
Yeah, we're at Von Braun tonight doing Memphis, Alabama exhibition. Then I'm off to Vegas tomorrow.
Grounds.
Yeah, you used to. I know.
Stomping grounds.
You had the Vipers back in the day, right?
That's right. I coached in that building.
Yeah,
that's it.
Roback.com, promo code TNR20 to jump in there.
How do you play so much golf in the football season? I don't understand this.
I never miss a day of work in football season. This will be the first time in my career that I've missed a day of work during football season. It just worked out that way. Bye week for Bama. We'll talk at the end of the show about Bama and LSU and what they should do during this bye week. Deborah says, don't think Jaylen would come back to Alabama. It's been too much talk about the NFL already. If you get a first-round grade, you got to go, though, right?
Well, yeah. That again, if that's what they're telling you, got to go. Yeah. What we've seen in terms of when you go and you start to do what those guys do for a living, and they start to peel back all of the layers of every single play, of every single game that an individual has played, and they're making that assessment, I think there's going to be quite a bit of sample size that would say maybe not quite yet. Not that he doesn't have the physical attributes, but the consistency of performance will probably ultimately determine what that grade will be.
Tyler says if he comes back to college, it'll be somewhere else, says Tyler in the chat room.
Maybe.
Anthony says, good win for Bama. However, we still need improvement. What that improvement needs to be coming up on the other side, after we talk about some of the games nationally, several drops hurt Milroe, says Steve, in that is absolutely true. And then all of you guys commenting about the lack of burst from Jaylen on some of his runs, and at times a reluctancy to run the football. It just looks a little different for Jaylen back there. But they win 34-0, and they're set up for that big game in LSU coming up after the bye week for both teams there. And boy, Nussmeier needs it to get his head back on straight before the Tide comes rolling into town. Auburn on the road gets a win against Kentucky. I mean, we had started to think, how many wins could Auburn get down the stretch? But they go on the road and they beat Kentucky here. And you could almost hear the choir singing. You know the old Southern saying, you're preaching to the choir? Everyone in the choir had been saying, man, run Jarquez more, run Jarquez more, run Jarquez more. 23 carries, 278 yards, 2 touchdowns. They rode Jarquez like one of those great thoroughbreds that run at Keeneland down the street from Kroger Field. He was unbelievable, a great Auburn performance from Jarquez Hunter.
But it didn't start out that way.
It did not.
The first 2 series of the game for Auburn, they didn't gain a yard. They did not gain 1 yard in their first 2 series of the game. And then, speaking of the show that you have coming on after this one, the middle 8, in the second and the third quarter, Auburn outgains Kentucky 200 yards to 36. All right. And at one point, there was a 14-play drive to open the third quarter in which Jarquez Hunter touched the ball 10 times. So if there's any further evidence of what needs to take place here to settle Peyton Thorne in so that he doesn't have the offense on his shoulders, and to line up and just say, hey, this is who we are. This is what we're going to do. Look at Jarquez and say, hey, buddy, I'm sorry, but you might get 35 today. And if they start stopping it, then we've got to win on the outside because they've loaded the box so heavily. And if they're not going to let Jarquez Hunter beat us, and we're going to force Peyton Thorne to beat us through the air, well, I would trust Peyton Thorne with one-on-one coverage more so than I would in a normal passing down where he could see any variety of things to try to confuse him or get him off schedule. So I thought it was a tough, gritty win. Really impressed with DJ Durkin's continued ability to create chaos and be disruptive, not necessarily resulting in sacks, but affecting the quarterback in a negative fashion that was pretty evident throughout the course of the remainder of certainly the last portion of the second half. So a good day, and it was one of those deals where you're watching it and you're saying, this is kind of reminiscent of what we've already seen before. How are they going to screw this up? Right? And
right.
they didn't.
Twitchy, quick jump, quick burst. I don't know what you use to describe Eugene Asante, but that kid can play, and he has a quickness about his movement on a football field that I think is absolutely elite.
Call it here. We'll give you a scouting word. We call it suddenness.
Suddenness, okay? Suddenness.
There you go.
Okay.
Add that to your repertoire.
I will. So tell me, when you watch Eugene Asante, do you see suddenness?
Yeah, I see quick twitch fibers. I see a guy that can get from 0 to 60 in the blink of an eye. The type of athleticism and change of pace, change of direction that you have an old saying, you can make somebody miss in a phone booth, or you could run the turnstile on somebody off the edge and really play within the confines of a very short area of space. And to me, you don't coach those things. Guys either have them or they don't. And then when you find somebody that might have those coupled with ideal measurables, you got yourself something athletically that everybody's coveting.
Yeah. So Hugh battled an illness, came up separately, got there and coached Auburn to a win. Now it's Vanderbilt coming to town this week for the Auburn Tigers, and Vandy didn't back down against Texas this past weekend. If I forget point spreads and everything, Vandy-Auburn is a matchup on paper. Take the uniforms out of it. They're at Jordan-Hare Stadium, advantage Auburn there. But this is a tough matchup this week for Auburn, and I don't think that surprises anybody.
It's so interesting, too, because normally I would agree with you. The games on the Plains advantage Auburn. Have you looked over the last 2 to 3 years at how many teams have actually gone in there and beat Auburn? It ain't many. Or excuse me, how many teams Auburn has actually beaten there?
Yeah.
It's not many. And it's certainly not as much as you think it is when you consider the environment. The road team has done well in Jordan-Hare Stadium. You could make the argument that we could debate roster profile 1, 2, 3, and 4 across the board at every position and say, all right, does Auburn have better athletes? Yeah, probably. Is Auburn the better football team right now? I don't know if you could make a clear and definitive case for that when you consider, and I'm not just talking about the close game with Texas, obviously the win over Alabama, but when you watch them, this is a pretty good, well-coached football team. I think I said to you a few weeks ago that you no longer get to call this a bad loss if you lose to Vandy. You've actually lost to a pretty good football team that's playing good football. And so I would be very concerned if I was an Auburn fan, because Vandy hasn't done what Auburn's done to this point, and that's find ways to lose games.
Yeah, I would say advantage Auburn in this category. I don't know how many times Vanderbilt can reach deep down in its soul and pull out a performance like it did against Alabama and like it did against Texas. Can they reach down in there and do that against an Auburn team that's not nationally ranked and is going to have the hype that those two games had? Can they do that this weekend? That'll be a test to the maturity of the Vanderbilt team.
It is a very similar test to what they had after they beat Alabama, and then they went on the road, and they could have easily laid down for Kentucky, and they did. They took care of business, right? So I do think there's some maturity there. And there is, you're going into a hostile environment. I get that. I want to see Auburn take advantage of that hostile environment if you're going to be a serious contender and make some improvements down the stretch here. But I think Vanderbilt's a tough out right now because they play smart football.
30 good minutes on the hottest team in the SEC, maybe the country, Texas A&M, on Alabama's shutout win over Missouri, and on Auburn, its big win on the road at Kentucky. Everything else in college football and what Alabama needs to work on in the bye week coming up in the second half hour of the Monday Morning Live show with Tom Luginbill of ESPN that is being brought to you by our friends at Who Is Coffee every morning right here as we wake up on Monday morning. The great Next Round blend, you can get it right there, nextround.store, nextround.store. It's got a link to the Who Is Coffee website. A lot of things for you there to test out. Who Is Coffee? They've got this specially curated flavor that's the Next Round flavor. You can check it out, nextround.store, nextround.store. This is Monday Morning Live. He's Tom Luginbill, and we're back in a moment on this. Follow.
Take the next round anywhere you go with official Next Round gear. Buy yours today at nextround.store.
Hey, this is Matt Roth, the franchisee of Walk On Sports Bistro in Birmingham. With the kickoff of football season, come visit us at one of our 3 locations, Stadium Trace, Greystone, or Trussville. Come enjoy our scratch kitchen menu while watching one of our 80 TVs. Whether you're looking for a pre- or post-game celebration, game day, or date night, we've got you covered. It's all about the win at Walk On Sports Bistro. Walk On, where everybody needs a little playing time.
In some places, football is a sport. In Alabama, it's a fine art. New Life Art is proud to announce Daniel A. Moore's upcoming painting, Deuces Wild. This season, Bama is blessed with a pair of very talented deuces. The pair played a huge role on both sides of the ball in the Tide's amazing 41-34 victory over number 2 Georgia. Deuces Wild will portray the unbelievable game-winning 75-yard touchdown catch by deuce number 1, Ryan Williams, late in the 4th quarter. The Dogs' last chance drive was stopped by deuce number 2, Xavier Brown, as he made the game-saving interception in the end zone, which will be celebrated by a small artist's remark in the bottom margin of each print. Go to danielmooreart.com to see the artist's preliminary sketch and take advantage of special pre-publication pricing for Deuces Wild. Also available, The Legend, Daniel Moore's final tribute to Coach Nick Saban. Order now at danielmooreart.com.
Happy football season. At the Next Round, we strive to make our loyal listeners feel like they're a part of the action all season long. My name is Emily Grace McWhorter, and I do that by bringing you along for any given Saturday in Auburn or Tuscaloosa. From pregame warm-ups, touchdowns that make you feel a part of the play, and everything in between, our goal is to make you feel like you're inside Bryant Denny or Jordan Hare. Follow along on our social media at Next Round Live on Instagram, X, and Facebook. Also, check out thebarnauburn.com and covercrimson.com while you're at it. Here's to Fall Saturdays.
From the creators of The Next Round comes 2 new sites, covercrimson.com and thebarnauburn.com. 2 team sites with the same excitement and information-driven content that you get every day on The Next Round. Live daily shows, recorded shows, free of charge, plus premium content with insider information starting at just $1. And it's the perfect gift for the Alabama or Auburn fan in your family. Covercrimson.com or thebarnauburn.com. Sign up today.
Hey, for all of your IT and printing needs, reach out to our friends at Xerox Business Solutions. Look, I'm still one of those old school guys. I print my notes every single day for the show. If you watch the show here on The Next Round, you see all the notes in front of me. From day one, Xerox Business Solutions, they've been with us here at The Next Round. Local for over 45 years. For all of your IT and printing needs, visit XeroxBusinessSolutions.com or call 205-969-3000. That's 205-969-3000.
A legendary coach once said, "It's not the will to win that matters. It is the will to prepare to win." Hi, I'm Bobby Humphrey, Vice President of Business Development for Bryant Bank, and I can tell you that our Bryant bankers have the dedication and experience to put together a financial game plan that is right for you. At Bryant Bank, we specialize in community banking and offer personal and business loans, checking and savings account, mobile banking, and treasury management services. Stop by one of our 18 offices across the state of Alabama to find out what unbeatable service and legendary results are all about.
Here at The Next Round, we love our guests, especially our 2024 football regulars. Auburn, Alabama fans, we've got your guys. On Mondays at 9:25, we'll be joined by Alabama offensive lineman Tyler Booker, and Tuesdays at 9:25, we chat with Auburn quarterback Peyton Thorne. Join us and rep your team.
Want more of the show? Download the app or visit nextroundlive.com for the latest podcast, The Mystery Fifth Hour, our Not For All Ages podcast, The Last Call, and the entire Double Down Media podcast family. All at nextroundlive.com and on the Next Round app.
We talk about all the biggest games every Monday at 10:30 with Fox Sports analyst Joel Klatt. Presented by MyBookie.ag, promo code NEXTROUND. If it is meaningful at all in college football, we cover it Mondays with Joel Klatt, presented by MyBookie.ag on the Next Round.
The World Wide Web is a large place. Find all your favorite people and content in the same spot. NextRoundLive.com is full of wonderful tidbits about the show you know and love. Find our gear, listen to your favorite personalities, follow our socials, and enjoy your trip to NextRoundLive.com.
MyBookie.ag, Monday morning live with ESPN's Tom Luginbill. As he mentioned, the middle eight coming up right after us, the great Brandon Marcello and Ryan Brown, taking you all the way up to the Next Round live. And then later today, Lance Taylor and Brock Heward with Unlocked at 1 o'clock Central. Overtime today with Hugh Freeze's news conference and a little post-Alabama stuff coming up between all of that as we do a full Monday, as we always do, getting ready for Week 10 of college football. Tom Luginbill of ESPN, we talked about Vandy coming to Auburn. Texas does survive the trip to Nashville. They're first as an SEC team, 27-24. My first observation is, you know, it's harder to tell for me about Quinn Ewers' mobility than it is Jaylen Milroe. Jaylen Milroe was a fine-tuned sports car, and it seems to be missing just a little in his movement. But Quinn Ewers, according to those close to Texas, doesn't seem to be moving pain-free after his oblique injury either. And something just seems to be missing about this Texas team. They beat a Vanderbilt team 27-24, so that counts for something. But Texas doesn't look like a world beater right now, does it?
No, they don't. And Quinn Ewers looks hesitant. He looks a bit gun-shy. He's not playing with that edge, that confidence to just let it rip. I feel like the hesitancy is holding back the offense. Now, listen, you can go back to the Georgia game and you can examine all you want the moves Sark made to pull Quinn Ewers out of the game, put Arch Manning in, and whether or not that was the right move or not. Because on that particular day, it wasn't Arch Manning or Quinn Ewers that was going to make a difference. It was the Texas offensive front getting their tail kicked by the Georgia Bulldogs. So in that moment, I think that caused or created a little self-doubt with Quinn Ewers, some second guessing there. Now you put him back in the game to start the second half. He plays better against Georgia, but again, there were other components to that game that were more problematic than the quarterback was. And then now you go forward and you're playing this Vanderbilt pesky team on the road, but there just seems to be something missing. And I can't quite put my finger on it, but when Texas, you look at last year, you look at the early portion of this, you look at the Michigan game, say what you want about Michigan, that's still a good defensive football team. You're talking about a guy that was just getting back and letting it rip. I mean, gunslinging it, total confidence in every decision that he was made, right, wrong, or indifferent. I think we're seeing a shell of that right now, Jim.
Yeah, and that's why the two interceptions were tips. I don't put that all on him. 4 sacks, that could be some of the hesitancy there and some of the problem up front for Texas. That concerns me more. What doesn't concern me is their schedule. Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky. Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky. So really, to me, there's no way Texas loses a second game until they play A&M at the end. And right now, in College Station, I think the country, you wouldn't need the Electoral College, the country would make A&M the majority to beat Texas.
Listen, if you're looking at how the two teams are playing right now, yes, I think that's fair. And again, confidence, momentum, being in sync, peaking at the right time. You want to go into the month of November and you want to be playing your best football down the stretch, not in the end of September, but the further this season goes on. And again, a lot of football to be played between now and then. We don't know if somebody gets banged up, if you have a significant injury to somebody. This is going to sound crazy, but I would be more concerned about Florida than I would be about Arkansas. Who else did you say it was?
Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky in that order, and then Texas A&M. Yeah.
I think Florida's improving. You can say what you want. It's easy. It's low-hanging fruit to knock, Billy Napier and that team, but they took Tennessee to the wire on the road. Then they completely dominated Kentucky. They look like a team that's actually making strides. And maybe I'm not calling for an upset here, but you're kind of catching Texas at a time where they're in a little bit of a state of uncertainty.
If it did not come after the Georgia Florida game, then I don't know if Florida can do that back-to-back weeks. If you give me
that'd be a great call.
Yeah, give me a good effort against Georgia. I don't know if they can do it again against Texas the next week. But that's the Longhorns' problem right there. A little pause before I say this statement because I think it is tremendously newsworthy. So pause. Deion Sanders has Colorado bowl eligible, and we're not to November yet.
First off, no pause necessary. Not only does he have them bowl eligible, they look like a competent, sound, quality football team. They're running the football better. They're playing more consistent defense on that side of the ball. They're stopping the run a little more consistently. I think that they've gotten to this place, and sometimes I think some stars have to align, Jim, because you look at the remaining portion of their schedule, and if you would have looked at it in the preseason, you would have been, Kansas is going to be loaded. Utah's going to be loaded. And that's not been the case. So the topsy-turvy Big 12, with their improvement and some other teams faltering, like an Oklahoma State, a UCF, a handful of others, the timing couldn't be better. And what's funny too, Jim, is I keep hearing all of these people and everybody say, where are the haters at? Where are the haters at? Well, if a team's a bad football team, you have every right to call them a bad football team. When a team makes strides and improves, and it's overly evident to anybody who's paying attention, you need to commend them on that side of it too. Like, just because you give analysis on what the actual product is on the field, and it may not be overly positive, doesn't mean you don't reserve the right when it changes to sit there and say, these guys are playing pretty good. Look at their schedule, Jim. Honestly, do I think that they are a 10-2 football team? Probably not. Could they finish 10-2? Yeah. They could. Look at the schedule.
Utah.
Now, they can't get 2 or 12 hurt.
Yeah. Utah, Kansas, Oklahoma State. Utah, Kansas, Oklahoma State left in the Big 12. So those are all winnable games there. And that puts them in the Big 12 championship game most likely with 60 minutes. With 60 minutes to play for a playoff bid. 60 minutes for a playoff bid. Colorado would be the most intriguing, exciting playoff team in the field to watch, I think. Great for ratings.
Well, great for ratings. And to be honest with you, just, again, another team with the expanded playoff that we would not have been talking about, like an Iowa State, like a BYU. Obviously, both of those teams in the Big 12, but it just gives us more to project and talk about in the month of November outside of your normal Georgias, Alabamas, Ohio States, Clemsons, and Texas, which is what makes the whole entire thing so much fun.
Yeah, I will tell you this. Deion has them bowl eligible first time since 2016. They've only gone to 3 bowl games since 2008, counting this year. And Travis Hunter, who has been battling injuries. We talk about the other guys battling through injuries. This guy's been battling it. It was going to be more playing time this week than the week before. More playing time meant 9 catches, 153 yards, 2 touchdowns, 4 breakups. Just an unbelievable performance from Travis Hunter.
He is, I think, without question, the most dynamic, unique football player. I'm trying to think of one. I'm trying to think of one in college football that has impacted a football team, not a side of the ball, a football team in the last 50 years of college football. Can somebody come up with one? I mean, it's not like Ndamukong Suh was pulling double duty and going over and playing left tackle. It's it's not like Charles Woodson was moonlighting, right? It wasn't full time. I mean, I look at what this guy's doing. There's never been anybody that's done anything like this.
Yeah. And Pro Football Focus has him second in the receiving grade in college football in the nation, second in coverage grade in the nation. So he's doing it at a high level on both sides. Fast pace down the stretch here for the final 10 minutes of the show. Brought to you by our friends at MyBookie, mybookie.ag, promo code NEXTROUND. Next round, spell it out. Put them together there. No space in between next round. You get your deposit bonus with MyBookie. Double that initial deposit. Promo code next round. You go to the website, mybookie.ag, or hit that QR code that's on your screen right there and enjoy all the great enjoyment of putting a little juice on a little football or baseball or basketball game throughout the year at mybookie.ag. Mybookie.ag. We're available throughout the country and the world. It's mybookie.ag. Notre Dame looks like a playoff team. They get a win this past weekend. Schedule sets up really well for BYU and Iowa State down the stretch. That may keep Colorado out of the playoffs. But here's Penn State. Penn State with Ohio State this week, and then they've got Washington, Purdue, Minnesota, and Maryland. Penn State punched their ticket this week with a win at Wisconsin, it feels like. Even if they lose to Ohio State, I don't see them losing again. That Penn State team, it wasn't overwhelming, but they get a big win against Wisconsin.
Well, you're going on the road, and Drew Aller was playing good football. I mean, he was 14 of 18 when he went down, and then Bo Pribula comes in and does a fantastic job of not only just managing the game, but making plays. I mean, he was clearly prepared. I think the offensive staff at Penn State, I can't say enough about Andy Kotelnicki and how he's transformed how people look at Penn State offensively, the difficulty in defending them, how he's improved the downfield passing game with Drew Aller most notably, which was the main criticism since Drew Aller got there was, why can't they push the ball downfield? Why don't they have any vertical or explosive plays? I thought it was a gritty, tough win. But this is the game that will define James Franklin. Right? This is the game that has eluded Penn State. They've had multiple opportunities to have this big moment and prove to the world that, number one, they're better than Ohio State and that all of the hype is real. They haven't been able to get that to come to fruition. I cannot believe this game is not a night game. That's the number one thing I sit there and I scratch my head at, Jim. And I'm going, I mean, you got this thing and you're not going to allow for a wideout at night? I mean, holy smokes. And so that's a bit disappointing if you're a Penn State fan. But listen, we can talk all we want about Penn State. I kind of feel like Ohio State, Jim, is one of those teams that is a collection of elite level players across the board that somehow is playing at a subpar elite level overall.
Ohio State, in their win over Nebraska 21-17, where they had to come back from trailing in the fourth quarter, they ran the ball 31 times for 64 yards. And you're going to say, well, his left tackle, Josh Simmons, was hurt. They haven't been really dominating the run game against quality opponents all year long. It is a concerning thing when you spend that money on, you got Henderson back and you spend that money on Quinshon Judkins.
Yeah. Yeah, and those guys should be erasers. If you have a deficiency somewhere up front, all right, those guys can compensate for that. And then on top of it, 1 of 10 on third down, Jim. How can Ohio State, with those types of players across the board, not be able to function in the run game and not be able to function on third down? And that was against a team that Indiana took behind the woodshed. So I think, listen, there's a ton riding on this for Ohio State. I think the pressure on Ryan Day is maybe greater than it has ever been, and they're not even playing Michigan because of what Ohio State did in this offseason, pushing all their chips to the center of the table, saying we are going to go out, we are going to build a championship team that can win a national title and above all else be the most talented team on the field every time we take the field. Well, they got to start playing like that.
Number 4, Ohio State. Number 3, Penn State in Happy Valley, 11 a.m. Central, 12 Eastern on Fox, coming up this upcoming week. Oregon's number 1 in the country. They're on the road at Michigan, so it's a great brand matchup this upcoming weekend. But Oregon is checking all the boxes these days against a ranked Illinois team. It was 35-3 at the half. 38-9, they win the game. They call off the Dogs in the second half. Dylan Gabriel, 16 of 26, 291, 3 touchdowns and a pick. Oregon seems to be hitting their stride.
Oregon, and I watched that game, their offensive skill in space is going to be a real problem for Michigan because Oregon has the capability of turning a game into a track meet, and Michigan cannot play that game on offense. You know, this past week, all of a sudden, Michigan, who previously could only run the football with no semblance of a passing game, goes back to Davis Warren. Now they look like they have some semblance of a passing game, but can't run it a lick. So I don't know how there's – unless Oregon goes out and turns the ball over and plays bad football. And listen, we've seen it from everybody across the country this year. And some have lost the football game as a result. Could that happen on the road? Absolutely it could. I don't think it will because so far Oregon's been playing pretty clean football, particularly after they got past those first 2 games against Idaho and Boise State. But this isn't a good matchup for Michigan when you look at their offense versus Oregon's offense and you're trying to keep pace.
Our 5-minute rush brought to you by our friends at GutterCap, guttercapbirmingham.com, guttercapbirmingham.com. 45% off the retail price right now. You go check it out online, guttercapbirmingham.com. And C. Stu will cap it so you don't snap it when you're on that ladder. He cleans the gutter one more time, and he jumps up there, guttercapbirmingham.com. All right, what does Alabama need to do in this off week to get ready for LSU? What's the one thing, if you were coaching the Tide, you would do to get them ready?
I would make sure that the focus is on connecting on explosive plays. 2 narrow misses last week, one of them to Ryan Williams. I just think they've got to get back to that being routine. And that's easier said than done. But Jaylen Milroe's strength has always been he's a very proficient, deep ball passer. But how do they continually get the ball into the hands of their playmakers that results in plays of 15 or more yards downfield, chunk yardage? They've got to get back to that because I think with the type of quarterback that LSU has, they're capable of doing that too. And so you're going to have to be able to hold serve, in my opinion, if you're Alabama, and that's going to come by getting back to routine, explosive plays.
Texas A&M's on top of the standings, 5-0 in the SEC. They're on the road at South Carolina, one of the big games in the country. About a touchdown point favored if you're looking at the strength, the SP and projections there at ESPN.com on the website there. Tricky game coming down from LSU, Texas A&M on the road to Carolina, huh?
It is a tricky game because I think South Carolina is a lot better than people probably give them credit for, certainly better than what you thought they'd be coming into the season. When you took a look at their schedule, they're pesky. They just kind of find around. They turn up like a bad penny. They just kind of hang around, and I would be very concerned about that. This, to me, will be a very revealing game about Texas A&M. If you go back to the comments we made in the first 15 minutes of this program, if they go in there and curb stomp South Carolina, that tells you everything you need to know what's going on inside the walls of the Texas A&M program. Because now you know that the comments that Mike Elko made are literally cemented into that program right now.
Miami doesn't play Clemson, Pitt, or SMU. You get Pitt and SMU this week in the ACC race, 7 o'clock on the ACC network down there in Dallas. Pitt and SMU, I mean, it's a ACC elimination game here.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, number 20 versus number 18. Pitt's got the most difficult schedule of the remaining competitors in the conference. As you mentioned, SMU doesn't play Clemson or Miami. Should be a heck of a football game. I mean, Pitt and that Syracuse game on Thursday night was wild and wacky. Pat Narduzzi's got Pitt rolling right now. And somehow, some way, our friend Rhett Lashley turns the ball over 6 times on the road and wins. We went back and did the numbers on that, Jim. In this century, teams who have turned the ball over 6 times or more, who had a -6 turnover margin, are 1-124. And the only win prior to SMU the other night was a Marshall win in 2011 against Memphis after turning the ball over 6 times. I don't have any idea how SMU pulled that off, and neither does Rhett Lash.
Boy, you just kill your possessions there when you're turning it over that many times. Hey, hats off to Sam Pittman. Arkansas got a big win on the road at Mississippi State. He seems to be off the hot seat, as to Billy Napier. Florida and Georgia this week. Give me 20 seconds on Georgia and Florida off the bye week. Does Florida have a shot?
I think they've got a shot, but DJ Lagway can't make freshman mistakes. This is where if Georgia cranks it up the way they did against Texas, they will force DJ Lagway, no matter how talented he is, they're going to force him into some bad decisions. And if that results in turnovers, it's going to be difficult for Florida to keep pace. I think Florida will compete. They'll battle. But you're playing a freshman quarterback, and I think that's always difficult in that set of circumstances.
All right, Alabama bye week. Auburn hosting Vandy, 11:45 on the SEC Network. Everything else going on in the country, Brandon Marcello and Ryan Brown will talk about next in the middle 8 as we approach Week 10. Thank you, Tom Luginbill of ESPN. You make Monday Morning Live so special. Brought to you by our friends at MyBookie, mybookie.ag. The middle 8's up next. Stay with us.